Hello everyone, welcome to I'm Calcutta's Placement Podcast. This video is created by the PM Tech Club to help you prepare for the roles in product management. I really hope you all are doing well at this point, but I fully will understand how stressed and tense you must be considering it's just 1 week away from the placement week. So today, to help you out, we have your seniors from the 58th as well as the 57th batch to give you some last minute tips and help you sail through this dreaded placement week. To introduce myself, I'm Shravani Joshi. I recently completed my summer internship at Licious as a product strategy intern. Prior to that, I've completed IT engineering and worked at TCS for 3 years. About our speaker lineup today, we have me, Vrajesh Iyengar, and Ashish Ashokan from the 58th batch. From the 57th batch, we have Naman Joshi and Soham Sen, both from Microsoft. So we'll quickly move on to the speakers lineup today. Thanks. Hi everyone. So now we have Naman Joshi from 57th batch. He interned at Microsoft as program manager and now he's also working there. So to you, Naman.
Hey everyone, glad to meet you. And I'll just give a brief intro of myself, right? I was exactly in your shoes 2 years back, kind of working my way through my CV, getting that verified. And exactly a week before intern, as you are, I was just kind of, very skeptical about how where I'll land and whether my preparation is good enough. And I can totally understand where you're exactly mentally spaced right now. And I had luckily my intern converted at Microsoft, where I worked on auto suggest on Bing. And post that, I've joined Microsoft recently as a PM, and I've been mostly working on Azure Cognitive Services in the speech side, speech to text, text to speech, language translation, Indic languages. That is the area that I work on. And yeah, I guess that's about me, and we can start with the questions.
Sure. So the first basic question is, how did you prepare for PM? Like after the summers in hindsight, do you think that you should have focused more on something or some questions that took you by surprise during the interview? Anything like that?
Yeah, so I think with time, PM Tech Club also has got a lot to do with it. We are kind of progressing in a very right direction in terms of understanding where the interviews are kind of shaped up, right? How the interviews are shaped up, and we are trying to cover it up. Most of the cases as part of our interview preparation during summers. But during the time when I was preparing for an intern, I found there was a small gap with respect to the specific part, that is app critic, right? Rest all like product design, guesstimates, GTM. We had a logical structure which was kind of followed, but for app critic we didn't have any logical structure. I remember in an interview I was asked like, what is your favorite app, and I said WhatsApp, and I directly started talking about the pros and cons of WhatsApp, right? What I like and what I don't like. And that is a strict no. That's a deal breaker, right? You cannot be starting with the answer directly. You need to scope it down first. And circles is not just applicable to product design, it is also applicable to app critic. I learned it the hard way, but hopefully your prepcom has done a good way to kind of ensure that you don't learn it the hard way and you have kind of known it before starting or going into the interviews. So yeah, that is something which I think that I could have known better before kind of jumping into those interviews. But yeah.
Right. And from my experience, I would say that I had prepared less about the guesstimates and GTM strategy part, which I should have probably focused more upon, because in one of my major interviews, I was asked a GTM strategy, which played a major part in my interview, and some of my batchmates were also asked guesstimates. So I would suggest you cover base with that also. And yeah, next question would be, so some of them are having problems with having clarity over the YPM question, but should this differ as per the company or as per their background? What do you say?
I would strictly say no, right? It shouldn't differ company wise. It's in the MBA, when you're kind of preparing via MBA, you generally have a very cliche answer prepared. And when you prepare for kind of company interviews, you have a very cliche answer prepared, like via our company, right? You have a very well structured answer prepared. But why PM shouldn't come from that angle. It should actually be why you want to be a PM, right? And the companies have been interviewing many candidates to know the difference. If you have an answer which is very straight from the book, right? It's not personal, it's very generic. Then people, the interviews will sooner or later catch that, and that wouldn't help you stand out, right? So it should be something which is very personal to you. Like for me, like if I try to frame my answer how I had it, it was mostly about me kind of being a dev in like as an ML engineer. I was working in the software industry for 2 years, right? And the instructions that were passed to me were very top bottom, and I didn't really know about what exactly was going on the planning scale, on the global scale, right? It was just my piece that I was concerned with, and that is not how I liked to operate. And I wanted really big boys table seat, right? I wanted to be involved in the decision making process and take a decision with respect to help with the decision making with respect to how the product shapes up, and that motivated me towards being a PM. And even before coming into the company, I was very focused on uh, that particular field only. I talked to many PMs at that particular point, even before joining IIM Calcutta. And I remember the only case competition I participated in entire 2 years was the PM Engage for Microsoft. I didn't participate in any other case competition, uh, besides which were kind of made compulsory by the place comms, of course, right? But voluntarily, I just participated in one. So it should kind of come naturally to you. And if the story is more personal, it will be much more kind of, it will earn you brownie points with the interview, is what I can say.
Yeah, as much as it's straight from your heart, it is more convincing, I would say, than just framing one answer that sounds good. So moving on to the next question, Naman. So your background, does it matter when you're interviewing? So are these interviews technical? Do they ask any questions regarding programming languages or something?
Not directly, I would say. Like it's also company interviewer plus your day specific thing, right? Because like there's some companies like Google which are known for asking a lot of system design questions. Salesforce, when it asks its product design questions, at least I was asked a lot of. I mean, when I was asked in answering my question, I was kind of asked a lot of implementation questions as such, architectural design questions, right? So they require you to have a basic level understanding of APIs and how kind of software design works, right? So these kind of things are good to have, not a must have, but definitely good to have. It can be a very good differentiator if you are kind of people are kind of similarly placed on skills. If one has a technical clarity and other doesn't, then definitely the one with technical clarity will have the edge. But having said that, it's not a must in your job role, right? It is. I've seen many people moving from marketing roles into PM with no technical background, but in the interview process, how it is shaped right now in IIM Calcutta, many companies tend to have that as a first step for kind of judging the customer participants, right? So that can happen.
Right. Uh, so there is one more question that a lot of interviewers like to cover, which is app critique or app improvement. So do you have any suggestions or pointers on what kind of apps should be chosen? Should they be unique or should they be common?
So generally, when interviews kind of ask an app, right, they ask in two manners. One is they ask you what is your favorite app, right? Or they can ask you what is the app that you've been using the most. So I would say if it's a favorite app question, you should actually answer the app which is your favorite and not go for something which is very unique or common, and not try to think on those terms. Try to go for your favorite app because more often than not, the it will try to deviate you from your prepared lines, right? If in the circles you progress down, if you have a particular customer persona chosen, right? And if the interviewer knows that you have prepared very well for it, he'll try to deviate and change the user persona. If he sees that the user problems that you have kind of identified are very kind of well prepared, then he'll try to help you to focus on any other user problem, right? So he'll always try to deviate you, and you only will be able to answer the question after deviation also well enough if you actually know the app well enough, right? If it's actually your favorite app. So go for an app which you have used a lot and you know in and out, right? So that is something which I would suggest. And if it's not your favorite app, if it's a generic app, people like questions are generally asked with respect to segment and not exactly with respect to the app, because there might be a specific app which the person might not have used, right? Say if I'm talking about uh, probably a food delivery app. Swiggy is something which generally people use, but if you're not used Swiggy, you must have used at least Zomato or any other food delivery app, right? So try to think in terms of segments like entertainment, OTT, food delivery, search engines, productivity, meditation, dating apps, and just try to prepare two or three apps which are kind of suited to that particular segment, so that if anything is asked from that segment, if you don't know the exact app, you at least know an alternative for that scenario, right? For that particular segment. So if you try and prepare from those lines, most of the segments and most of the apps will be covered automatically.
One more doubt here. So during MBA, we really use Chrome a lot of times. So some of them have answered Google Chrome or Instagram as their favorite apps. Should such mainstream apps to be told as your favorite app or not? I mean, does
See, I
that
mean,
have a good impression?
it depends. If you are going to say Microsoft interview and you're saying that, say Office is my favorite app, right? And luckily or unluckily for you, the person who's interviewing you turns out to be the PM in that space, right? So he might have a lot of info which you might not, and it might go or not go in your favor. So it's a tricky thing, as in it can go or not go in your favor. If you know the app in and out, the interviewer also might be impressed since he also knows it in and out. But if you want to play it safe, try to avoid the domain in which your interviewer might be very skilled in. If you're not very confident on your own knowledge of the app, right? That is the way I would put it.
Right. And so last question. So with just 1 week to go for their placement, D week, do you have any advice for them? Any suggestions?
No, I mean, I think you have kind of done a very great job kind of till hanging in there. And like 55 batches, right? And probably 420 students almost on each batch have survived it. And there's no reason you won't be able to, right? And it's kind of, you put in so much hard effort to get in where you are. First of getting into IIM Calcutta, making your CVs, getting it reviewed, attending all the PlaceCom meetings, preparing, right? And there's no reason for something to go wrong. And it will be a day. Keep at it. There's a tendency of people to kind of just get relaxed at the very last stage, and confidence is good in your preparation, but just try to brush up your skills and try to keep yourself mentally relaxed is what I would say, because at the D-Day, if you're not kind of relaxed enough, it's natural to have some anxiety when you're like kind of answering questions. But if you're not relaxed enough, you might not end up kind of performing to the best of your potential. So kind of pay equal attention to your kind of core preparation part, but also pay equal attention to your mental relaxation and the sanity part, right? Really, if you can put it that way. So that is very necessary, I guess.
Right. So Naman, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and being a part of this. I'm sure PGP ones will take your advice and do well in their placement week. Thank you.
No worries. Happy to help, and all the best to all the PGP ones. And if you feel to contact me at any point of time, you can go via the PM Tech Club, right? I happen to be the VP of marketing and PR there just a year back. So where Shravani
Yeah,
and
the X.
they are right now. So just feel free to contact, and all the very best.
Sure. Thank you. Hi. Now we have Soham Sen from the 57th batch. He interned at Microsoft and now he is also working there. So on to you, Soham.
Hi, this is Soham, and I'm answering the first question, which is, how did you prepare for PM in your summer internship journey? I think, firstly, you have to understand what the expectations are from you as a PM candidate, what you're expected to know and what you're not expected to know. This is crucial for setting up your base. Then next, of course, there's the part about understanding all the frameworks, knowing all the keywords, knowing what you're talking about. Then, of course, you have to prepare for your CV. And by that, I mean that you should be conversant with whatever you've mentioned, and you should be able to cite a few examples, a few stories. You should keep those ready. And also answers like why you want to be a PM, which I think is really, really foundational to your interview as a whole and the direction that it takes. Next, you should be aware of all the different types of questions or the different type of cases that can come to you. For example, the product design case, the root cause analysis case, and maybe even things like analysis of particular apps that you like and what you improve in them, which is sort of somewhere in the middle in many cases. And of course, you should be prepared for a free-flowing discussion, because that's what a PM candidate is supposed to be able to do. And don't worry, but that's not very difficult to prepare for. And you should go about it by beginning to analyze the apps that you use the most often and the ones that you love. And that'll help you maintain an interest in what you're doing, but also try to understand the finer points of both the perspectives as a user and as a potential PM. After that, you should go ahead and start discussing cases one-on-one with your batchmates, which we did, and your seniors, of course, were crucial in this part of the process for feedback and, of course, brainstorming together and working things out. And that's also the sort of role that your interviewer will be playing when they're actually doing a case with you, because they'll take you through the discussion in a way such that you feel that you're being helped, but also that you're being challenged. And that's probably going to help you set up for the real interview as well, because this is what your seniors are going to do. After this, I think you should and need to be well read on some of the domains which you think you're interested in, or at least those domains which are mentioned in your CV. For example, if you worked in information security, you should be knowing about that a little bit. You should know the companies, the top products, why it's used, where it's used, and what the benefits are, and what the leading players are doing. In this way, you will be conversant with a number of ideas from your field and also from elsewhere, and that will help you really put a polish on your interview and help you feel confident about it. So that's how you go about preparing for PM broadly. I've also written a blog about it, which I'll link below. Thank you. Hi, I'm Soham, and I'm talking about the second question here. The second question is what I think I could have done better in hindsight. And I should tell you there's a load of those things. For example, I should have done many more cases. I should have been much more well rehearsed in my answers. I should have prepared a number of more applications from different domains and not just the ones which I used exclusively myself, because there my perspective was limited to that of a user, but also those which I didn't really understand so that I could develop a sense of empathy and actually practice the sense of empathy which a product manager often needs by analyzing things which don't come naturally to me or are not used in my daily life. So I think that's something that you should really think about doing if you're someone who's taking a preparation exclusively on the lines of what you use every day. I think that's not going to help you develop user empathy. And I think that's something that we really, really need and would be really something that puts a bit of a shine on your presentation finally. Hi, I'm talking about the fourth question right now. And I think if you're confused about the why PM answer, first of all, don't worry, because that's all of us when we begin. And you have to really understand the role of a PM and the fact that product management is a very wide domain with different kinds of PMs operating at different levels, depending on company, seniority, product, and of course, expected impact and opportunity for impact for that matter. So first of all, begin by seeing where you come from, right? And try to draw that story into the present day and see where that fits into the PM landscape. And if it fits in, whether it's at one company or two companies or, a number of companies, you don't have to worry. What you need to do is you need to try and connect where you are coming from and where you want to go and see if that makes sense for your YPM answer. I would say that you might try customizing it to every company, but first of all, it's important for you to really believe what you're saying, because only if you truly believe can you make the interviewer believe you about what you're saying. And that's really crucial. I think that's something that people don't often think about when they're thinking about their YPM answer. It should not be, something straight from the cloud. It should be something that's logical, that's reasonable, that connects who you are and where you're coming from to where you want to go and what you want to do in your career. So that's how I think about the YPM answer, and I hope that's helpful. Hi, I'm answering the fifth question, which is about a difference between a product manager and a project manager. And I think the fundamental difference is that a product manager is responsible for a number of decisions that go into the making of a product, whereas a project manager is more responsible for execution and pushing people and making sure the team has what it needs exactly to scale or to execute on whatever decisions have been made. The product manager is also responsible for making those decisions, for answering the why behind something, not the what or the when so much as the why. And I think the why is really something that you want to focus on in your preparation as well and in your journey. You want to try and sound like you know the why behind the decisions that you took in your pre-MBA career. And if not know them, at least be interested in them. When someone asks you, you should be able to talk about them a little bit. So as a product manager, that's your role. As a project manager, your responsibility is probably a little more skewed towards execution. Of course, in product management, that's also true, but then you're backwards integrated into the decision-making process as well. And that's something that's really, really impactful. And that's something that you're responsible for solely in the end. Hi, I'm going to be answering the ninth question now about CVs. And I think the CV is a very important component of your preparation for any interview, not just the PM interview. And that's because in the CV, you've written things that you say you know about a little bit, or at least have worked on. And that's something that gets tested. And what gets tested is essentially your word. When you say you've worked on something or you've studied something, how far does that go? Does it mean you're actually able to deal with its concepts and you can converse with someone who's talking in those terms? Or does it just mean that you've touched those ideas but don't really know how to apply them or don't really know their real world use? And that's the difference between knowing your CV properly and just skimming through it. So I think what's really essential is you need to know a couple of stories that exemplify the stuff in your CV, whether that's bug solving, whether that's a technical challenge that you were able to overcome, whether that's working with teammates, whether it's an award that you got. You should have a story about it. Firstly, because a story is really interesting and engaging and keeps the interviewer hooked. And also because a story for you is easier to remember rather than some spiel that you will try to cook up on the spot. So have those stories ready beforehand and keep them prepared for your CV, because it's very important. And especially in PM interviews, it can lead into some questions for your interview as well, right? So that's useful, and that's something you should keep in mind. Hi, I'm going to be answering the 11th question on the list here. So the question is how to go about things now that there's just 1 week left before your placements. And I'd say you've overcome the worst of the worst if you're still alive and breathing at this point. So first of all, kudos for that. And secondly, with 1 week left to go, I think you're done with as much preparation as you likely can do. And now it's time to sort of de-stress and let yourself go a little bit, focus on other things and focus on making sure you're up and available at your best mentally, physically, and emotionally on the D-Day. So make sure you're eating right, make sure you're sleeping well, don't overdo things, make sure you're spending some time with friends, talking to family, and also speak to people outside the MBA bubble, because in this bubble that you're currently in, it seems like the outcome of the next fortnight is going to decide the rest of your life. But I want to tell you that I felt the same way and that it's absolutely, absolutely not true. It's one of the biggest myths that's propagated to you, and you happen to believe it, as did I. But it's our duty to tell you that that's just something that we have to do to make sure you feel pressured enough to push you, to make sure you're ready, make sure you're preparing yourself. But it's not really true. In the long term, we've spoken to alums who've worked for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, even 20 years, and they all say the same thing. In the long run, there are many other things that matter, not just where you start, but also how fast you're moving and in which direction you're going. So keeping that in mind, make sure that you don't do anything in the next 7 days, whether in relation to someone, whether in relation to yourself. You don't do anything in the next 7 days that you'll regret for the rest of your life, whereas the outcome of the next fortnight will not really remain with you for the rest of your life. So that's something that I really, really want to stress on. And I think one thing you should really focus on is on yourself and making sure that you're available for yourself. You're taking the breaks that you need. You're taking the breathers that are essential to make sure you can keep performing at the level that you are expected to in the interviews. And also, I think in the true spirit of I Am Calcutta, in the truest spirit of Joka, I think one more thing that you should really be looking out for is your batchmates and your friends and those around you, and those who perhaps are not so calm, perhaps they're troubled by their shortlists, a lack of them or abundance of them. There are many kinds of troubles people are going through at this time. And I think one thing that I Am Calcutta really taught me is that it's our culture, it's our religion in one way to stand together and try to be there for the people that we're spending the time with on campus and sharing the I Am Calcutta experience with. So I hope you guys uphold that tradition as well as any other batch throughout the history of Joka. And I'm sure you will do that. So focus on yourself, focus on your friends, and take it easy. Right. I'm answering the first question for alums. And the question is, how's been your experience in the role? Is it as exciting as it sounds or not? I think as far as I can speak about my experience of the role, both in my internship and my current role in the company at Microsoft, it's very different from what's expected or what you see on the outside, because there are a number of products that are not visible externally but are visible internally. And of course, we can't go into details, but as I keep saying, the kinds of product managers depend, the kind of work that product managers do depends on the kind of products they have, the incentives that the company has about those products, to work on those products, the sort of outcomes they're looking for, the audience they're catering to, and also the investments and the outcomes that are expected. And basis that, there are lots of different PMs. There are B2B PMs, there are B2C PMs, there are PMs who focus exclusively on data. There are PMs who do a lot of UI, UX work. There are PMs who write a lot of PRDs. So there's various different kinds of PM roles. And I think there's not one role which can describe a general idea of PM for everyone that will be true and applicable everywhere else. But I think there is a certain consistency in what you need. You need the ability to deal with ambiguity. You need the ability to keep asking the correct questions. You need to have the ability to not be disappointed very easily and to pursue people. And of course, you need to understand the technical ideas that are being discussed at a high level, and of course, integrate well with your engineering team. So I think these 3-4 ideas are really key and crucial in any of the PM roles. Some of the examples that I took, and also the ones that I see. But I would say in my experience, PMs really are so varied that you can't pin them down to one definition, and that it really, really needs someone to get into the role before they can understand what they're up against. And of course, the question about whether some applications or some particular skills are useful or not, I would say it's very useful to have an understanding of system design, irrespective of the role of most PMs. It's very useful to understand that. And I would also say that understanding of coding languages and the sort of structure of those languages, what they do, what ideas they want to, enumerate in code, that's also very useful. And most technical people with work in IT or tech would have that sort of understanding. Apart from that, in terms of applications, you can have all sorts of things. You can have mixed panel, and you can have various data analysis softwares, and you can have visualization like Tableau, and of course Excel, and so on and so forth. There's lots and lots of stuff that you can learn. But again, it depends where you end up and what the expectations are, because every PM charter is run a little differently from another, depending on the leadership, depending on the product, depending on the level of integration with data that product suite has, and what is available to look at, right? So I would not say there's one thing that you learn that you have to be good at. The general stuff that you are ready to learn and have the capacity to learn many of these things, that's really useful. Like if you could just jump into Figma for 2 days, on the third day you're creating passable UI UX screens, or you're creating flows which can enhance the ease of understanding for an engineer you're working with, or something that can explain the business value you're trying to pitch for, and that's a really useful skill, and that's something that you might look to build. And of course, if you're continuously practicing ideas like breaking down an application or trying to understand the business model behind something, why certain product decisions are made and what are the links that those have with the business profitability, revenue, etc., then of course that's something really, really interesting to do, and something that I'm sure at some point in your PM career is going to be very useful to you, even if it may not be so at the very start. So I think that's an important aspect to keep in mind as well.
Hi, so now we have Ashish here. Ashish is from the 58th batch, as you know, and he interned as the product manager at Optum. So Ashish, on to you.
Yeah. So a brief introduction about me. So I have a total of 3 years of working as a consultant in EY and Deloitte. And major part of my work experience was focused towards the technology side, mostly on the digital transformation, wherein I was actually building products for digitally laggard clients wherein they could actually use our product. So I was basically working with the developers and the business analysts to come up with a product that can be basically leveraged for their business needs. Yeah. And during my summer internship, I worked in Optum as a product management intern, where the project role was mostly on data strategy side. where I actually collaborated with 15 product managers across 5 product landscapes, where I actually tried to understand their backend architect and come up with a streamlined data strategy wherein each of the product would efficiently and accurately use the data that are actually provided there. So as based on the description that I have given, it was not a proper product management role, but it was more focused towards the technical project management side. Sorry, the technical product management side of it. Yep. So that's pretty much it.
Thanks for your introduction, Ashish. So we'll move on to the first question, the most basic one.
Yeah.
Like, how did you prepare for the PM internship? And so, like in hindsight, as our summers have passed already, do you think you should have focused more on some particular element of the interview or some part of the interview that took you by surprise that you think you should have prepared a bit better?
Mhm. Yeah. So like how I prepped my summer for the summer, right? So I actually prioritized few of the elements for the prep. Like for example, I gave more importance to the design and aesthetic compared to the RCA because RCA only few selected firms asked, like for example, Salesforce and Meta.net in our time. I'm not sure like how it is following in the current process, but yeah, more focus towards the design and aesthetic. Now coming to that part, the shortcoming that I found was that like the case that you get in the improvement and design, right? So those are basically focused towards sector, like for example improve that an e-commerce platform or improve an OTT platform. So these are like particular sectors, right? OTT, retail, e-commerce, and everything. So if you have more idea towards the value chain side, like for example, who are all the stakeholders involved and how is it like one particular information is transferred from the inception of a particular task to the completion of task. Like if you're actually more clear about that particular point and more, I would say it it fetches you more brownie point if you uncover untouched points of that particular case. Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty much that I thought I should have focused on. Yeah.
Also, I think there is a misconception that personal questions are not as important for a product management interview. So what do you think about that? So other than the tell me about yourself or why product management, do you think any other questions are important and how to structure these answers?
Yeah. So like as you might have like the students who are watching this video, like they must have understood like some aspect of what product management is, right? And one of the main features is that how effectively you are communicating to the stakeholders. So that is one point that the interviewer basically focus on. Like for example, tell me about yourself or how why product management role. Like these are the points where they actually want to see how interactive and how efficiently you use your word to communicate with the interviewer. Try to make it more, I would say, engaging, such that the interviewer just aligns with you and keeps interested with the conversation that you have. And like not only this, like there are other questions, like for example, product managers are considered CEO of the product. Do you justify with this particular statement? Like what is your opinion on that? So they want to know your thought process on that particular side. So and some more questions like which one is the worst application that you have used? Like do you have any feedback on that? Wherein some certain sort of framework is applied, like. And for example, one more question might be, what are the difficult phases you have actually encountered during your work experience? Like they want to see how much you have actually collaborated with the stakeholders, like how we are actually aligning with their division. Like if you frame your answer like very well, right? Then it's actually like a plus point for your interview. And most of the time for the situational based kind of questions, right? Focus towards the star framework where you just give a situation and what was the action that you have done, and out of that, what was the final outcome that was generated. And while framing those questions, highlight like how you worked with the stakeholders and what was the approach or action plan that you built. Like focus on that particular point, so that would be good to you. Yeah.
Definitely. Like as much as the personal questions work towards warming up you towards the interviewer, they can also be considered as a company candidate fit questions asked by the interviewer. These can be a screening round questions, as well as it can be the only question of rounds that interviewer asks you and maybe outs you or he selects you. So you really have to polish these questions well. I am sure Ashish agrees with
Yeah, agree. Like during your, yeah, definitely. Like during the while you are answering the questions, right? They might be trying to check if your answers are aligning with the culture that the organization is trying to find in you. So yeah, I think that's a key point that you said. So I agree on that.
Right. So, for example, Amazon follows their 12 principles or something really well. And if you some put something like in thoughts while you're answering this question, that really puts your perspective really nicely in front of the
Yeah.
interviewer. So definitely do have the yeah company candidate fit in mind. So next question, Ashish. Do these interviewers consider the candidate's background? Are the technical questions asked in this question interview? Do they ask about programming languages, etc., or do they expect these candidates to know such stuff?
So I would say it totally depends on how you have actually framed your points in your CV as well as the company as well. Like for example, uh, I would say like like some of the new Indian startups that they have recently come for the placement, right? So they have asked like coding related questions as well. So like a certain basic understanding of how APIs are working and how like microservices are actually working. Like these two are the major components that are being leveraged across all the applications, like whether it's Swiggy, Netflix, Uber, Ola, anything like they work on this basic principle of APIs and microservices. So if you have like a basic knowledge around that side and also like the work like if you are technically sound to explain how you actually work that, not going deep into the technical side, but the bird's eye view of how the system is actually working. That's what the interviewer is focusing on, not the coding side or like how well you actually implement the coding feature and everything, but the bird's eye view, how the process actually goes from one part completion of task to the other. So if you are aware about that, then I think it's perfectly enough for any interview for product management.
Sorry, as they are recruiting for the managerial position, they are looking for you to be able to do the stakeholder management. As a PM, you also have to communicate with the technical team there, so you need to have some kind of sound knowledge, maybe not the programming languages, but understanding the backbone of the products is what really the interviewer
Yeah.
is looking forward to. um,
Yeah, like basically interviewer is looking more into how enthusiastic you are towards technology. And one way of assessing that is through your knowledge on how a system actually works. So yeah, like a bird's eye view is totally enough for an interview.
Agreed. So yeah, Ashish, the last question. So considering that there is just 1 week to go for their placement week, do you have any suggestions or advice for the PGP ones?
Yeah, so I would recommend like go with the flow that you are currently doing. I would say focus more on the design and the aesthetic side, like since the majority of firm focuses on that. Like for example, design the best application in the world. So it's like a very open-ended question, but it's a design case where you basically ask a certain set of clarifying questions. So clarifying question helps you a lot. It actually scopes down your level of how complexity of the case. Like for example, design the world's best application. You could say if that application is for me, it would be an application which caters to my major hobby. So for me, I love writing notes, and an application for writing notes would be very helpful for me. So those kind of clarifying questions to simplify your case as such. Another thing for the last week preparation would be to read on like the company goals of the major firms, like for example, Microsoft, Amazon, uh, GameStar. Like there are few Indian startups as well which might be coming for the in product management role. Like try to understand what is the goal of the company and also like the company overview. Like for example, Optum actually asked me some sector related questions. Like for example, Optum focuses on health tech. So how is the health tech in India compared to that of US? So those kind of company specific questions you might need to focus on. So there are some repositories that has been shared by the Prepcom team which you can look in for a TLDR. And I would say like go with the flow, bro. Like you don't need to worry a lot for the internship. Like you will definitely get placed. Just maintain the quality of prep you have and yeah, consistency is the key.
Definitely, I agree. Ashish, thank you so much for joining us here. And I really hope
Yeah,
that PGP ones will take your advice to their heart and do really well
yeah,
in
sure.
their placements. Thank you.
All the best to you. I know you
Yeah,
will come out with plans.
all the very best. Hi all. So now we have Rajesh Iyengar. He interned at Amazon as product manager. And yeah, so to you.
Thank you, Shravani. So yeah, my name is Brajesh, and welcome to this product podcast. We would like to cover a lot of topics today. And firstly, I'll just start by introducing myself briefly. I'm from Pune. I interned at Amazon as a product manager during my summers in 2022. Before that, I was a product engineer at Goodera, and I worked mainly on web and mobile applications for roughly 2 years. And before that, I just did my engineering in electronics and instrumentation from BITSCOA. So that is a brief background about myself. And yeah, I'm open to questions, Ravi.
Yeah. So the main basic question, Rajesh. So how did you prepare for the PM role? And so as our summers are done, in hindsight, do you think you should have focused on something or something that took you by surprise during the interview?
So one thing that we tended to focus a lot on was product design cases only, and not a lot on app critiques or say RCAs or guesstimates, which are asked by few companies. But mainly two companies came and took us by surprise. One was Media.net, which asked some technical questions. They asked RCAs, guesstimates, and all. And I think personally, I focused too much just on the product aspects of preparation and not really I limited my focus in such a way that I wasn't able to integrate learnings from other sectors into my prep. Like there are some insights that you can draw from, say, GTM cases in marketing as well as in consult. Maybe you don't need to dive that much in depth, but you should have an understanding as to after designing a product, how you say get it out in the market. Like these are conversations that are had with say senior vice presidents of companies that are interviewing you, and on your buddy call you might end up having a casual conversation, and these sort of insights might help you come across as someone who's well read and who doesn't just think from a narrow perspective. So I think, yeah, if I was to improve one thing, it would be integrating other types of cases into my prep, just casually if not very seriously.
I agree with Rajesh on this because even I didn't focus much on guesstimates and GTM strategy part. But me, myself, I was asked GTM strategy in one of my major interviews, and a lot of my batchmates were asked guesstimates in their interviews as well. So the product startups that come for the interviews do try to cover a lot of base with a plethora of questions. They do not just focus on the design cases and app critics per se. That's why I would suggest, to cover your bases. Yeah. So next question, Rajesh, would be: are these interviews technical? Do the interviewees' background matter? Do they ask questions about programming languages, etc.?
So yeah, this is one common question, since especially at IIM Calcutta, we see a lot of software engineers who come in as PGP ones. So one main thing is, so actually in terms of technical questions, look at it in two different aspects. One is based on your own experiences and your own background. So if you have a software engineering background or an engineering background in general, or you were involved with anything particularly technical, know about your work ex, know about what projects you did and what kind of tech stacks you worked with. For instance, I can cite two instances where I was asked technical questions. One was by media.net and one was by Amazon. So in Amazon, they during my interview, they actually deep dived into one of my projects, and they asked me some level of how the implementation was actually done for the project. So it was along the lines of implementing some offline data collection features. So the level of technicality that you can expect is to know how basically you were storing data. Where was this user information actually stored? Was it on the device? If it was stored on the device, what sort of databases were storing it? How did you go about this entire implementation? Were you responsible for the entire deployment pipeline, or were you just responsible for building a feature? So having that sort of clarity in terms of your own experiences is the first ask. The second one is company specific. So sometimes, mostly like the day of your interview or your buddy calls, what I recommend is go to the company's website and you will see what their USP is. Like, what is the kind of product that they deal with, or what do they kind of advertise their product to be doing better than other products. So for instance, media.net is into context based advertising, which is different in the sense that they don't track user data through cookies. So what is important is to know what cookies are, or how is user data tracked, or say how do two applications communicate with each other and store data for analytics. So those are the kind of technical things that you could read up on. And some resources for this would just honestly be, when you come across a term, just Google it. You will get 2 or 3 top hits. You just read those articles. In those articles, if you don't understand something, again, Google it. Go recursively till you understand a lot, and it might be overwhelming initially. So you can just get some friends who have a certain background. If in case you are not from a tech background and you want to learn something about a company, maybe just get some of your friends who have that background to explain some terms. So there might be simple terms like APIs or say DBMS, and people with a tech background know that these are not too complicated of concepts, so to speak, but people without backgrounds might get a little overwhelmed. So just don't get overwhelmed. Google everything. You need to know things from a manager's perspective, not a developer's perspective.
Definitely. So these also help. So this info also helps in your personals kind of, and when they check your candidate company fit, so that you should Google about the company and what kind of products do they make. That would be, set the best kind of. Hi. So the next question is: are personals important for the PM interviews? There is a misconception that other than that, tell me about yourself or the why PM, no other personals are asked in the interview. So what do you think about that? How to structure those answers?
So I think one thing that you need to keep in mind when you're looking at personals for product management is that you will be kind of responsible for your entire product or your feature, right? And you will be the CEO of your product, so to speak. So when that happens, there are a lot of moving parts that come into play, and the interviewer is trying to gauge how you have interacted with these elements in the past and how you will deal with new challenges which are similar to things that you might have experienced in the past. So things that you need to keep in mind is your situational questions, like how did you face how did you deal with failure in your life. This is something that is important because you will face a lot of product failures or launch failures where the customers might not react the way you want them to, and you need to quickly like come up with strategies to deal with this and to mitigate any sort of losses due to this. And apart from this, there's also a lot of stakeholder management involved between you and all different cross-functional teams. So it is very crucial for you to understand what goes into making a team run smoothly and what goes into delivering a project on time and successfully keeping all the stakeholders happy. Yeah. So mainly your personal preparation should be such that you build stories around certain events in your life. They could be projects, they could be your PORs that you had in your past. How did you like some leadership opportunities, some opportunities to show where you kind of stood out or you had a different way of thinking to solve a problem. Basically, problem solving in different forms. All these should have certain instances, and when you're answering them, keep the STAR framework in mind, or the CAR framework, whatever you like to call it. Basically, like give some context, what was the action taken and what were the results that you achieved. So keep that structure in mind when you're talking about anything, be it personals or any other random conversation you're having. Try to give justification for why you did something, uh, and what was the impact, and like how did you come about discovering the need for it as well. So sometimes software engineers and analysts have seen face this problem where they have repetitive work, so they don't have any unique project that they can highlight in their work-ex. So there must be some sort of insights that you derived from this. Like you were doing something repetitively. Was there a thought of automating this process? If not, why was it a bottleneck for your organization to not be able to automate that process? Say it was generating a weekly report. So was there some sort of initiative that you suggested to your manager where you could probably automate this to save man hours for your company? Or was there any initiatives that you took or any learnings that you got from the way things worked? So these are some things that you can focus on in your personals, and try to have situationals ready, definitely, like how would you handle conflicts, etc.
Right. So there is one more question that a lot of interviewers like to cover, like it's their favorite. The question is about app improvement or app critique. It's disguised as a what's your favorite app question. So what kind of apps should be chosen? Should it be a unique app or should it be a common mainstream app? What do you think?
So I think I like to look at app critiques in three different tiers. Ideally, the first tier would be like in terms of preparation, first tier being the most important that you must do, and tier three is when if you have time left, you should go there. Tier one is pick one favorite app and one app you hate, like something that you hate about the app. So it could be any sector, so to speak. It could be something you use more regularly, because generally in an app critique it also makes sense to tie up how your experience has been with the app and the general expected user journey with the app. So for me, I used to order a lot of food through Swiggy, and so I had picked that as my favorite app. And some things I like to do is also look at the journey of the company, like whether it is in your stage zero when it's an MVP type product, or whether it's in a later stage where they are looking at different features for monetization. So again, relating it with Swiggy as an app, I used to take the interviewer through the journey of how the user goes about the app, and different features and pain points along the user journey, as well as a different angle where I spoke about which stage of the journey the app is currently in. So Swiggy initially was, when it was looking at acquisition, it did not have a lot of monetization features. Uh, in the sense, there was no penalty for canceling that much. Your customer service was very smooth. You could like there was no 60-second rule and all of these things, right? Later on, when they had to monetize because Zomato was launching their IPOs, you should be a little aware of like different situations which led to certain features as well. When they started focusing on monetization, they had to introduce things like cancellation within 60 seconds is the only one that can be forgiven, and you'll get a full refund basically. And that did lead to customer dissatisfaction, and so they did introduce some things to sort of gamify the experience. There was your that the slot machine where you pull something to get a random discount once every 4 days. So these were some value adds that were used to balance out the experience. Same thing kind of happened with Ola as well. I think Ola wanted to focus on monetization, so they later on introduced a feature where a driver that is already on a trip can accept your ride. What happened actually was that users had to experience longer wait times. So customer satisfaction went down. The number of people who canceled a journey went up because they suddenly started seeing 2-digit waiting times. And normally they're used to 3 to 4 minutes. So that happened, but it did save a lot of money for them because the dry run time, that is the time when your cab just goes from the location that it's waiting at to the customer location, that is not paid for. So those things were introduced keeping that stage of the company in mind. So you can pick anything that you use. Mostly it could be Blinkit, it could be Grofers, Amazon, Flipkart, whatever you use, Myntra. Just pick it and be comfortable with it. The tier two of app critique would be all the different sectors ka pick one app. So have something in your banking space, like there should be some bank that you do mobile banking with. So there could be one app, or it could be some sort of a Grow or some sort of another third party app that lets you do trades, Coinbase, something. Then pick something in the food space. Your food delivery can be one. Then something in medicine, Practo, and you can have 1mg or a few apps like that. So pick one of them in every sector so that you generally have covered all bases. So what happens in an interview is, in case they ask you an app that you haven't heard of before also. Like for me, what happened was they asked me about Big Basket, but I was a Grofers user or a Blinkit user now. So I did not know the exact user journey, and I was asked to do some sort of app critique as well as an RCA combined in that. Like it was sort of a fused question that they asked. And what I did was I flat out told them that I am not very familiar with the user journey of Big Basket, particularly because I use Grofers for my daily grocery needs. So is it okay if I make certain assumptions based on Grofers and go along, or can you describe the user journey to me? So this is how I clarified that I am unaware of this, but I am willing to answer based on some contextual clues that you can give me as an interview.
Yes,
So
this is a very
as long
important
as,
pointer.
yeah, I feel like keeping a communication open with your interviewer is very important because you don't know everything. You are ultimately you're a first year MBA student, or like, you know, you're just stepping into this world. You don't know anything at all, and it is okay to ask them what does something mean, as long as your thinking is clear and it is structured in some way. If they know that you're taking a user, you're going through the user journey and discovering different pain points, then they know that you're thinking in a structured way. If you don't know the user journey, that's not your fault. However, be prepared to know some general things. You should know how shopping happens online, like how e-commerce works. You should know that there is a login, then there is some way to get to a product page, and then there is adding it to the cart, and then payment and delivery or whatever. Like that sort of broad overview, if you have, that is also fine. Tier 3 would be doing a differentiation between multiple apps in every industry. So what is the difference between Zomato versus Swiggy versus Food Panda? You know, knowing in depth about all the apps in every sector. That would be, if you're already done with tier 2, then I would say go to tier 3 and do this comparative thing where you know exactly why a particular thing stands out better. Like Swiggy ka maybe the UI is better, that's why you like it more than Zomato. Zomato has a lot of in-depth reviews and photos more than Swiggy does about food and the ambience of restaurants. Maybe that's why you like Zomato. So you can make this differentiation between apps in all the industries as your third step.
Definitely. And one of the domains that you should choose a product or an app from is the productivity domain. So something like Headspace or something like Google Keep, anything from the two extremes, but you should have one app from the productivity domain. And other than that, I would suggest to avoid the really well developed or the mainstream applications, because whenever you are suggesting some improvements in that, you also have to think why the PMs there or the developers there did not went with that. They must be having some good reason for not having that improvement already in the app. So if suggest say you are talking about Microsoft Office as your favorite app and the interviewer is already working there, so he knows better than you about what you are talking about. So you also have to be uh, conscious of that fact that interviewer might have better knowledge about this, and you should not just go along the way as he. The second thing would be, while choosing the apps, you should make sure that it's not too unique or not too niche or not too particular about your interest or hobby. Because while you are explaining the app, like Brajesh said that he did not know about Big Basket, so he said that he knows about Blinkit, and then explain the similar user journey. When you are, if the interviewer does not know about your app, and when you are explaining the user journey, if it's really particular to your interest, the interviewer may not be able to relate to the app at all. Or, and if he does not relate, or he or she does not relate, then there would be no say, it would not make sense to them to ask you about the pros and cons, because they do not know what the app is for. So I would suggest, if even if your app is not really used, use an app from a domain which is used. So if you choose productivity or you choose the e-commerce, if you're not choosing the mainstream apps, choose something from a domain which is mainstream. That is something what I think of.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, even in one more thing is avoid games as your apps, favorite apps, because or avoid anything that relies on an addiction mechanism to get you hooked onto the app. Like they want to know what sort of features are appealing and not how they got you addicted to paying money to, like, pay to win apps, those kind of things. If you start talking about how they had such engaging features that they got you hooked on, that is a bad way to go about it. However, you can talk about entertainment as a thing. You can talk about OTT apps. You can talk about music streaming apps in general. Like you can do a comparison between, say, YouTube Premium, YouTube Music, and Spotify if you want. But yeah, like Shravani said, keep it a little generic and don't preferably don't pick an app from the company that is interviewing you, because they know much better, and if they think that you're just giving some very bad reasoning, because they know in depth about the numbers as well, which you don't have any idea about. So don't take that risk. Pick something that is generically loved, if you want to call it your favorite app, and you can reason as to why you particularly like certain things.
Definitely. Like, you don't want to fall into that trap where the interviewer knows better and you are just going wrong all the way. Lastly, Rajesh, as there is just 1 week to go for their D week, I would say. So, do you have any suggestions for them to, just stress over the last week or what
with
to do?
1 week left, See, 1 week left. What generally I see happening is there are some companies that come with their shortlist early, and then there are some that come late. And many people tend to spiral into thinking that, "Arey, ab tak ye do companies I was hoping for, like let's say they are like Microsoft and Salesforce, and their shortlist mein my name did not come. So like, what should I do?" Like, you start spiraling and you start questioning whether product is the right space for you and all. See, placements are going to be a place where everything is very chaotic. Most of the things won't make sense in terms of why somebody got a shortlist. So don't get into any sort of comparison with why did person A get a shortlist and why didn't I get it. We have basically the same profile, and like, try to avoid that sort of competitive thinking. Just keep applying to as many companies as you can. Think about roles that are, even if you don't get the role you desire or the company that you desire, start having some preferences, some priority in terms of sectors as well as companies. You could either target like a bigger name but not the sector of your preference, or the sector of your preference and a smaller name. So keep everything open, and this is not the end of life. So don't stress too much. Just get good sleep whenever you can and keep applying. Don't miss deadlines.
Definitely.
Just
And summers is I wouldn't want to say that, but it's a game of luck or maybe a chance. So the profile matching and shortlist I didn't get, he got, she got, वो नहीं चलता है, वो नहीं हो पाता है. So I would say, and in the last week, as much as you want to, do not have mental stress, you would be having a lot of quizzes, you would be having a lot of assignments to do, the ones that the companies give, 2-3 hours long, etc., etc. You'll be with all that, but still I would suggest just do 1 or 2 design cases a day to keep up the momentum, but also focus a lot on your personals, because there is a misconception, as we talked about, कि personals utna matter nahi karta hai, but they do, and polish them well, because sometimes your personals or how you answer these questions, the conflict related questions, etc., play a really important part. They can also be a screening round, and they might also be the only round that a company takes if they want. So you really want to successfully pass the company candidate fit there. So yeah, face the mirror, talk in the mirror, like, practice the personal questions really well in the last week, but also don't stress too much. So don't stress over you having just one shortlist or having too many shortlists. You just have to convert one, and all the PGP2s and as you are seeing, your PGP3s are also here to support you. And yeah, I would say trust the process.
Yeah. One more like small tip, just last tip that I might give is, if you are done with your prep, you're a little confident. There are some people in this bucket as well who are confident that they've done enough cases with PGP2s. You're in a good place overall. You're getting generally positive feedback and, like, say, shortlists. One thing you can start doing is just read up many articles on Medium. There are a lot of product-centric articles that I think a lot of 58th batch people also keep sharing on the Telegram group. So just go through some articles, and then you will end up like just clicking on other links and just keep reading about tech-related things. Look up what is new in metaverse, what is new in blockchain in terms of products that are released, or what kind of offerings can they target. Something. Just look up articles that are happening today. Like, I read up about Apple launching USB-C for the iPhone 15, for instance. Like, it's a small random piece of information, but maybe you can integrate it with some sort of an app critique when it comes to Apple as a iPhone as a product. If you were ever asked to do that, like, things will just link randomly. So the more you read, the more your product-centric thinking will improve. And I think that will generally help you do cases as well as talk about your personals very well.
Definitely. Like, the Medium is one source. There is also the Ken, which has a lot of news about the tech startups more so in the Asia. And so some news would be Adobe recently acquired Figma very recently. So that something you could incorporate in your interview, like I like this app or something. Just keep a tab on the technical part as well, the technical news, and yeah, don't stress. So I
Right.
guess that's about it. Thank you, Rajesh, taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us here. I
No
hope
problem. Thank you so
fans
much for having me, Shravani.
really take your advice to the heart. Okay. Thank you.
Wishing you all the best.
Good night.
Thank you.